from a galaxy far, far away.
And a bookshelf straight out of the 90s.
From Thrawn to Dantooine
And everything in between. This is Legends Look Back.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Legends Look Back, a show brought to you by Utini.com, a show for people who will always sing the Boy Meets World theme song at the top of their lungs, no matter where they are, where we talk about all things Star Wars Legends, celebrating our rich EU history, as well as diving into lesser-known Star Wars classics. I'm your host, Jared Mays, and today I'm joined once again by the fabulous Freddie C. How's it going, man?
It's going real well, I have to say. You said it earlier. I'm not sure if I'm sweating because it's hot or because I'm a little nervous, but
You are in California.
Yeah, exactly. Weather's perfect here, supposedly.
Well, this is a very exciting episode. We've got some big things coming. You're about to find out. But before we introduce our guest, Meg, how are you? Once again, we've got our producer, but this time with a lot less technology to juggle. How are you doing, Meg?
I mean, I'm still going to be watching everything just to make sure
Make
it
sure
works.
those audio levels work.
That's what I do. Everything's great.
Now, we do have one little bit of an announcement. Do we want to go ahead and start plugging because, hey, this came up on us fast. And that is we are moving from Twitch to YouTube Live on the 25th. If you're listening to this far in the future, hey, congratulations. Hopefully you can catch us on YouTube and we still have a podcast. And if you're listening to this as soon as we drop it, which we hope most of you will, because this is going to be quite the episode, we do want to let you know we are moving our live show from the 9:30 p.m. Eastern time from Twitch to YouTube Live on the 25th. Meg, do I have that right? You're the one that juggles the technology.
You are correct.
Okay, so on our February 25th episode, that will mark our transition. Now, here's the thing. Tonight's episode is a crazy coincidence. You might even call it the will of the Force. In the fall of 2019, Freddie, is that when Mandalorian Season 1 came out?
I believe so, yes.
2019. What is time anymore? I was writing a reading guide for Utini where, you could click on Star Wars books you should read if you liked The Mandalorian. In my research, I found out that there was a 50-issue comic series set during the Mandalorian Wars. And, of course, we're talking about Knights of the Old Republic by John Jackson Miller. If you'd like to know more about them, well, hey, we've spent over 3 hours talking about them so far this year. And Mr. Miller says that we were mostly right on our coverage there. I said, don't tell us what we got wrong. After writing the reading guide, I bought the Marvel Epic Collections. I told Freddie, hey, man, add these to the list for us to cover on Legends Look Back. And never at any point in all of this process, in the countless hours of reading these on the exercise bike at the gym, did I ever in a million years anticipate that we would get the tremendous honor of talking to the legend himself, author of the masterpiece that is Kenobi, the delightfully dark Lost Tribe of the Sith, the man who led off the transition into canon publishing with A New Dawn, author of numerous beloved works of both legends and canon novels, comics, short stories. Woo! Here to talk about the 15th anniversary of the Knights of the Old Republic comic series. We welcome to the show John Jackson Miller himself. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Great. This is pretty exciting for us, in case you can't tell.
No, it's I appreciate it, and I've enjoyed listening to the bits of the podcast that I've been able to hear. It's 15 years. Actually, this ride started 16 years ago because it was I was just driving through an ice encrusted road today, and I remembered that it was on a day just like this that I got the cell phone call saying that my pitch for the first Knights of the Old Republic story had been approved and that we were go. And I was fortunate not to, swerve off the road then or now, but it's all good.
That's amazing. I can't imagine. I was listening to another Star Wars author, forgot who it was, talking about, I think it was the Claudia Gray interview the other day. She was talking about getting that email while she was pumping gas. And I was like, next time I pump gas, I'm checking my email because you never know. You never know.
Yeah. Although actually at that same intersection, about a dozen years later, I was fired from something.
Oh, no.
So
no.
I just goes to show not to check your email while you're, at on the phone while you're at an intersection.
It's a fateful intersection for sure. Well, we really enjoyed covering your Reddit AMA from a few weeks ago, trying not to cover the same territory and ask you the same questions there. And of course, we had you on the Living Forest a couple of years ago. Loved your interview there. I do want to ask you though about your process as a writer. What is it like for you to, obviously your career has spanned both prose and comics, short stories. We're specifically covering Knights of the Old Republic on this episode, but tell us a little bit about your writing process.
Gosh, I don't know that I can actually, one of the reasons I've said that I have not written a book or anything like that explaining how to write is because I'm not entirely sure I know how I do it.
Okay.
I was trained as a journalist. I know, how to write a news article. I know how to tell somebody how to write a news article. Telling somebody how to write a story, a fictional story, that's just another whole thing entirely. To me, it's much more like jazz. I just play a bunch of notes and see what it sounds like. I create a jambalaya of, to drift into another metaphor, of ingredients and just shake it until it looks like something. And occasionally, there'll be some touchstone moments or something where I'll see this and I'll say, okay, yeah, this is the story. This is the moment. This is the series. This is what I want, to everybody to feel like when they're reading this. And so that's kind of how it was. And, to put into context when this was created, the series was pitched, I think January of 2005. So, we had, the two prequel movies, but not the final prequel movie was out. And
right.
So we'd had this experience of the prequels, and we had this notion of what it was like to, we're all sitting in the audience, and we're all smarter than everybody on screen.
Sure.
We're smarter than everybody on screen because we know not just which one of these characters is going to be Darth Vader, but we even know how he's going to die. We know everything. We are smarter than everybody on the Jedi Council. We can see everything. We can see this disaster in the making. The wonderful thing would have been to do something switching something up completely. So, expectations are completely baffled. And that happens now, and that happens, when they adapt things these days as well, when they want to, if somebody's adapting a very famous mystery, they'll throw a different version of the ending or a different ending, or they'll change things up just to keep people interested. I've been going through the Hercule Poirot mysteries that the BBC did, and I keep thinking to myself, well, since I've read these books, do I actually need to watch the movies? And then I realized, well, okay, they changed this person and that person, and they changed this and that and the other thing. But everybody kind of knew, in watching the prequels, that this nice little kid was going to become Darth Vader.
Yeah.
They knew that, Obi-Wan Kenobi was going to have to age awfully fast to get to become the guy that is in the New Hope movie. And so, when I came up with, the idea for Zane to be a fugitive and for his masters to have killed all their Padawans, I actually started with that moment before I knew what their motive was. I knew I was going to have this thing happen. I was going to have this moment like when Luke Skywalker, comes back to the farm and sees what happens to his uncle and aunt, and he's bereft and he's depressed, and it's, what do I do now?
Right.
My whole world is turned upside down, and what's next? And as I continued writing the plot, I then built out, what the motive was, and the motive was designed to put the reader into the position of or rather, the reader relates to the teachers, the Covenant members, because the Covenant members have seen that something bad is going to happen.
Sure.
And the people who have played the Knights of the Old Republic video game have seen that something bad is going to happen. They just don't know who's going to become what, if anybody.
Yeah, that's so
and, we approached it as though, there were going to be deeper connections than maybe, we really ever intended. But the plan always had been it wouldn't be completely. And I should say, Dark Horse never said anything about I need to tie into the video games.
Right.
They just wanted the name. Dark Horse actually created the Knights of the Old Republic name because it came first from the Tales of the Jedi, and so I was the one that decided, well, I'm going to back it up about 7 years before, so we won't know who's going to become who. We don't know who's going to do what, but we're able to use these settings before they get blown up real good. We could use Terrace. We can use all these other things, and so there's these familiar things. And then I also decided, let's do something. It won't be part of the A story. It won't be part of the first story, but let's do something where I can get Malak in there. I can get Revan in there. You'll notice that Revan and Malak are not in 1 through 6 proper. That's the commencement series.
Okay.
That's because they were never part of the pitch. They came to me as we were looking at doing, because I wanted to do a free comic book day issue.
Right.
Because it was actually in my magazine, Comics Retailer, that I edited. We actually, in that magazine, that's where Free Comic Book Day was invented. Joe Field was a columnist for our magazine. He proposed Free Comic Book Day. Diamond responded in the magazine, said, "Hey, let's do it." And so, I kind of had that brush with the beginning of that. And I said, well, I'd really love to write a Free Comic Book Day issue. Dark Horse said, well, that's too late for when the series is coming out, because we came out in January. Right. And Free Comic Book Day was in May. Mm-hmm. And so they said, well, let's just real quick do a prologue story that's unrelated to everything else. And I said, well, that's great, because then I can tie it into the second story arc where we've got Malak.
Wow.
And now I should shut up and let you ask the questions.
No, that's
let's see. He's covered 4 or 5 of our questions so far.
Yeah, that's perfect. You're an amazing storyteller, and one of the questions I had for you is, what's your favorite thing about being a writer?
There's a number of famous people have been attributed to this. I don't like writing. I like having written. Probably this is my favorite part of the writing, is being able to talk about it later after the work is all done, and after it has hopefully been a success and received. This last year has, with no conventions or anything like that, it's been rough. I mean, I had a novel come out last summer. I haven't signed but a couple of copies in person. And one of them was to the proofreader of the book. It's sort of like if a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it, did it happen? That's kind of the way I am. These things don't resonate with me until they're actually out there and people are talking about them and I can talk to them.
Yeah, that's really thoughtful. We appreciate, for us as fans, that you do engage with us to such an incredible level that you do. Especially love the way that you do the behind the scenes on your website. I might have spent more time reading the behind the scenes of every issue than I actually spent reading the issues themselves as we were getting ready for the podcast.
I forget what's up there. I just this summer, one of my, pandemic projects, or rather, lock-in projects, is I I moved the entire site again. It's now like the 4.0 version of the site. I moved it all to WordPress, and so I got to reread everything. And well, not everything, but that's a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah, there is.
There is, and I keep forgetting what's on there and what isn't. And you had mentioned that I said you got something wrong. You didn't get it wrong. It's that I thought the thing was on there that actually it turns out it's not on there. You had asked, you had discussed who the physical model for Zane was.
Oh, yeah.
And Dustin Weaver, and I looked to see where this was quoted. I don't think I said it originally. It was said on the Dark Horse boards. Dustin Weaver said it, and he had said that he based his look on Christian Slater, and that may well be true, and I'm sure it is true. But Dustin didn't create Zane.
Right.
As far as I can remember, and I cannot find the email where it was said to me, so I think it may have been said just verbally. Zane is, and this is not going to help the people who are listening, just an audio. Zane is supposed to look like Eric Stoltz as of Some Kind of Wonderful.
It's so uncanny.
Wow.
And I think that's kind of who uses the model. He's just this sort of happy but intense looking kid with the 1980s hair. And that's kind of who I have always heard for him as well after he suggested that. Christian Slater is a lot more intense.
Yeah. No, that was much more accurate for sure. We'll have to put a picture of I had to put the picture of that movie cover that he just showed us up in our Discord channel for everybody to be able to see. I appreciate that you've set the record straight on that. One of my favorite stories that you tell in the behind the scenes on the website is how you had lost a portion of one of the issues that you had written due to a computer failure, a hard drive crashing. And now you said, and I couldn't tell by the tone on your website or not, whether or not this was a joke or if this was true, that you keep a flash drive on your cat's collar. Is that true?
Oh, that was, I think I was joking about that. That's, that was joking.
Computer
about
crash
that.
is true.
No, I think I was joking about that. And I think that's probably a reference back to The Cat from Outer Space, a Disney movie.
Oh, okay.
Or if not that, then For the Love of Benji, where Benji the dog had a secret microfilm stamped under his paw. I can't remember which it was. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a joke. That was bad because that issue was almost completely written, and this was back before the days when I think Mac was still on OS 9 or 8, and so there was no time machine. There was no way to roll back completely, and whatever backup I was using was not there. And that ended up being the issue that we thought was cursed anyway, because that was the issue with I did a single issue where it was called Homecoming, and it was Lucian coming back to visit with his mother,
right,
or try to, and it wasn't that it was cursed, but what happened was we had a number of scheduling things. There was kind of a domino effect that happened. By doing that 0 issue, that meant that Brian got behind and couldn't do issue 5.
Sure. So
that's why Travel Foreman is the artist on issue 5. And then when Dustin is in doing Flashpoint, he does such a wonderful, extremely detailed work that he can't get the third part done in time. And so Brian is available by then, and so we flip-flop issues 9 and 10. So if you have the original comics, you will realize that we go Flashpoint Part 1, Flashpoint Part 2, Flashpoint Interlude,
right,
and then Flashpoint 3. And I spent years explaining why that was and why we reversed it in the trade paperback from then on.
Sure.
I was like, hey, nobody will ever remember this from now on because, they showed the episodes out of order like they do on TV sometimes.
Yeah.
No one will ever know that they were shown out of order. And now, of course, it turns out that that issue with Lucian is one of the most valuable Star Wars comics in existence.
Right.
Which is insane. But it is because, and I did a whole different podcast on this with a group of comic book speculators who proudly wear that. It's just something that in this summer and winter where people didn't have conventions to go to, they started bidding things up. And my friend Nick at the Key Collector Comics app started highlighting all the first appearances of characters, and so
right, yeah.
So we get the first appearance of Malak, the first named appearance of Malak, the first appearance of Revan, the first named appearance of Revan, and I remember I threw all of those guys because I said, the very, 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 very first appearance of Revan is not in 9 and it's not in 42. It's in 0.
Yeah.
He's very, very tiny in the background of a scene where Zane is flying, into visit his teachers.
Let's go back and look for that.
Yeah, it's very small, and so they're bidding that issue up now too.
Sure.
And I'd feel better about that if it was 5 years ago because I still had. I had 1,000 copies of that issue.
Wow.
Because they were going to be given out at a convention, and the convention didn't get around to stuffing the bags.
No.
And so I said, well, I'm taking them with me.
Wow.
And so, yes, I've been giving those issues out for decades.
Wow.
So
Yep.
it's
Giving out your retirement fund.
I
actually.
didn't know. Well, what I just did do is I did just do a signature series signing at my local comic shop where there are going to be a number of issues coming on the market that some of them are from my personal collection, and then some of them are others that people brought to me. But yeah, they even had me doodle characters on some of them. So I can't draw it all, but I can.
There's the Mumo illustration.
Yeah, there's the Mumo brothers and Griff. Apparently you don't have to be able to draw to be somebody signing a comic book. So
yeah, who needs a signature when you can draw the Mumo brothers?
So one of the things I wanted to ask you, going back to the very beginnings of your writing process and whatnot, what was your inspiration for Zane? I mean, he's not very traditional, right? He's kind of a screw up, but he's very pure in heart. So I just wanted to get a little bit of that background on that inspiration.
All of these stories and just about everything I've done were retelling the original Star Wars, at least from the perspective of, Zane is like Luke. He's this person who feels like he's on the periphery of everything.
The hero's
journey. And whose life is miserable. And he discovers that he's thrust into the center of things and has to try to find his own way from there. So, I mean, yeah, I think really Zane is more, he more comes from, the source material in that sense. Other characters, there's a little of, this character, a little of that character, a little of this plot line here and there, that come from other things. Obviously, people make, comparisons to The Fugitive, not just the TV show, not just the movie The Fugitive, but the TV show The Fugitive before that. And of course, The Fugitive, before that even goes back to Les Miserables and other things like that. But then there are just things that are just moments that I want to capture. The speech that Zane gives to the Masters at the end of commencement. I'm riffing on a movie called Ransom there. And Ransom was most recently done by Mel Gibson. But before that had been done in the 50s with Glenn Ford. who basically he sends a message to the people who have kidnapped his son, saying, "See all this money? You're not going to get any of it. Instead, I'm going to spend it all. I'm going to spend the rest of my life hunting you down." And it's designed to scare the heck out of whoever is listening, whoever is out there.
Yeah.
And that same moment is in both versions of that movie. And I wanted to have him have that moment. And then I wanted there to be a subtext to that moment, which is that, again, if you're the person reading the comic book, and if everybody is constantly, when's he going to fall to the dark side? When is he going to fall to the dark side? Why does every Jedi have to fall to the dark side? It's been done. It's been done, and it's been done by better than me. I mean, it's been done, it's been done. But everybody's constantly going there. And, I'm looking with Zane and saying, no, this kid is going to end up taking a third way. He's going to take another path. The thing is, that punchline there at the end of the book is designed to do what he intended to do, which is to scare the masters. He's really trying to just scare them away from him.
Yeah.
They are on notice, but at that moment, he has no plan, no expectation that he's ever going to succeed. Of course, we finally get in Vindication. In Vindication, we finally get the moment. Spoiler warnings, I guess, galore here, but
yeah.
Vindication, we get the speech by Griff, who is like, if you were really paying attention, he says this to Cornelia, but he says, if you were really paying attention, anybody who knew this kid would never in a zillion years think he was going to fall to the dark side.
Yeah.
He might fall under a bus, but he's not gonna he might fall off a building. He's not gonna fall to the dark side. It's just not him. This is the comic relief character does not fall to the dark side, and both Zane and Griff, Griff doesn't think he's a comic relief character, and he is.
Right.
And Zane was clearly the comic relief in his group of friends.
Okay, sure.
He clearly, and that's one of the other moments that I liked out of Commencement is that sort of, there's kind of a darker, vibe there, which is that, yeah, his friends love him, but they can tell he's not gonna make it. They in fact, the thing that gets Zane's best friend killed is that he immediately suspects them when they're gonna make Zane a Jedi Knight. He's like, yeah, wait. he's really that guy, we love him and we love him and everything, but that's just not it. And so, and again, was that moment on the page when I wrote the plot? I'm not sure if it was. But by that point, in the writing process, it's like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Sure.
That's natural. And, I just finished writing my pandemic novel, I guess it would be. And yeah, I had written 130,000 words, and longest novel I've ever written. And I got to the end of it, was ready to send it, and I said, "Oh wait, there's another 1,000 words that belong in this book." So I added that. So anyway, I'm always working on multiple different things at the same time, and multiple projects, but you always are sort of the story will reveal itself to you as much as it does to the reader.
Wow, I appreciate the thoughtful answer there. I like the idea that you didn't want to just rehash the territory that had already been covered with Zane. I just wanted to tell a more interesting story, more original. Now you mentioned Griff and how they are both comic relief in their own way. And I brought this up on the show a couple of weeks ago. I want to get your take on it. in your mind, is Griff more Danny DeVito or Joe Pesci? There he is. He's showing is that a Griff trading card?
Oh, that is a Griff trading card. It's a one of a kind by Brian Ching. Yes.
Oh, is it by Brian Ching? Wow.
It's one of the Topps Heritage cards.
We've got a thread going in our Discord of all the different looks, the drastically different looks that the artists give.
Well, nobody could tell what he was. I mean,
Right.
he goes from being a monkey to a hedgehog, and back and
Don't we
forth,
all?
and that's okay. And he doesn't really look that much like the action figure either, which is what his species was kind of based on in my mind.
Yeah.
But no, I think I had, for his voice, I kind of gone with Steve Buscemi.
Oh, okay, sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he's somebody who's always calculating. He's a legend in his own mind. The Griff is, and
Yeah.
he doesn't. He takes everything extremely seriously, except when he doesn't. And if something goes totally wrong, it's like, oh, well, I never really meant to. That was no big deal.
Yeah.
That was nothing. That was and again, I was able to plug that a little bit into his species and their description, because if you look in the alien guide, I kept using the alien guide from the Wizards of the Coast role playing game,
Right.
and they talk about his species and how the Stybians, and how they basically they go around play acting. They go around. Their whole thrill is I'll pretend to be a banker and I'll just be a banker, or I'll pretend to be a lawyer and I'll just be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And it's all sort of an art to them. And I looked at it that way. There are various things where the series kind of gets a course correction halfway through.
Right.
Because of Vector,
Right.
and because there's a change in editors. We go from Jeremy Barlow, who leaves to go do Indiana Jones, and takes me with him to do the Indiana Jones adaptation. Randy Stradley takes over for about a year, and then we go to Dave Marshall, who is now the editor-in-chief at Dark Horse, for the last last 2, 3, 4 years that I'm working with Dark Horse on Star Wars. Randy came up with a variety of suggestions that he wanted to see us do to freshen the series up. There's one big one having to do with the plot and Vector. But one of the smaller ones was he said, "Are you concerned that Griff never learns anything?" And I said, "Oh, no. Griff learns that he's right. Griff only ever learns that his point of view is right.
I can relate.
Whatever has just happened is just more proof that he's right." Malik and Demagogue get into a brawl. He's got the line. I'll never understand why people fight when there's no money involved. I mean,
Okay.
that's I wanted. One of the things some people say about growing older is you just become a more extreme version of yourself, and
Yeah.
in this case, that's him. So I mean, there are other things that he suggested that I built in or found ways to do. Zane being a pacifist. We decided to amplify that and to put him in a position where he accidentally had to kill somebody, which happens in Destroyer, and then he's just trying to navigate life as a Jedi who really doesn't want to, not a Jedi, but somebody who follows most of the Jedi path.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't feel qualified to say who should live or die anymore. You watch a Star Wars movie, there's a pretty big body count. There's a huge body count in the Knights of the Old Republic comics, but Zane only kills one person, and that's an accident. yeah, that is. I said, well, if Spider-Man can go through 50 years not killing anybody, I can, except by accident a couple of times. We can try this and see what it looks like, because it'll, if nothing else, it'll look different.
Yeah.
And then again, probably the biggest change was because of Vector. That rearranged, and I know that you got into it on your podcast. That rearranged the plots of when various parts of the plot got resolved. Jarael's story, Demagol's story, those would have been resolved before Zane's chase would have been over. But the fact is that when we were doing Vector, Dark Horse really wanted there to be consequences.
Sure.
That when the story arc finished in Knights of the Old Republic, that you could get to the end of the year and say, okay, that mattered.
Right.
Because so many crossovers that you see in other comics,
right,
don't have any impact. Nothing happens because of them.
Yeah.
And obviously we weren't going to have any, kind of Crisis on Infinite Earths kind of thing. But it did, it was the case that Celeste gives us the evidence, or gives Zane the evidence that he needs to be able to start knocking down the dominoes faster. And so, where I had been going, I was going to probably kill one of the masters a year, of the Covenant. We pushed it forward, and then that moved Jarael and Roland Demagol to the other side.
Okay.
But that was okay. I mean, it was, the only fear was that if I didn't get to finish the Demagol story, then the whole thing would have just been weird.
Yeah, that thread would have been left hanging. Right. Yeah,
Well,
I like that idea that the crossover event needed to feel like good storytelling rather than just like a money grab, which I think is often a complaint when it comes to those.
Oh, we wanted the money. We wanted the money.
Be honest.
No, when Randy sent the idea to all of us, I think the subject line was the same thing. We want to be able to do the same thing that everybody else does,
Sure.
which is draw attention to these books.
Yeah.
But also we wanted to do it our way. We knew we couldn't do it the same way. It took a good year to get that hammered out.
Sure.
We knew that the characters couldn't encounter each other except in the case of maybe a Force vision, and it really was a collaboration where I think at one point the discussion was, well, it could be a biological threat, and then our thinking was, well, yeah, but a virus isn't very visual, except in terms of what it does to the world, as we found out. And then I think Jan Duursema just happened to be Googling on Wikipedia and found the Rakghouls, and I said, oh yeah, I said yeah, Knights of the Old Republic. It's never explained where these things came from.
Yeah, right.
And in fact, I believe the only possible explanation for them is Sith magic, because people turn into these things and suddenly gain Hulk-like proportions. Where's that coming from? And why is it that only the Sith have the serum? Only Malak's people have the serum in the game going on. So I said, well, that's then fine. We'll do that. But even so, we had to go through. I went through 4 drafts to get to the beginning of that arc. And finally, with the 4th draft, they flew us all out to Portland, and we basically sat around for a weekend and figured it all out.
Wow, that's amazing.
I like the behind the scenes of creating the comic, right? You've got all the people involved trying to come up with a story, or at least you've got all of the drafts that you're coming up with and whatnot. And I just find that whole thing very interesting because we always see the end product, right? But we actually never get to see that that creation? What does that take? What does that look like usually in your world?
It's not pretty. It's not always pretty. No, I mean it's there's tens of thousands of words that were thrown away over the course of. It was a buddy cop movie. I mean, it was Zane and Griff, and that was it. Because there's just explaining everybody else is just too much. It was just too much, and I had already, I'd known already that I needed to begin moving closer to, the mechanics of what the Covenant was trying to do, and how they were more than just these 4 or 5 people. And I said, okay, that's how these pieces interlock. And that would be the way that we got there. But yeah, I mean, it really was a case of throwing. Yeah, you see the movie The Martian, where the guy's throwing all the furniture out of the spaceship so it can lift off.
Just watched that a couple weeks ago. Yeah,
that was literally that story.
Sure.
I was throwing more and more out of it, and it also was a good palate cleanser for me, because I had just done the second year, which was the Days Nights year, and it was really, really verbose. It was. You want to know why we got so far behind that year? It's because the pages were just loaded. There was so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
And we ended up going through multiple artists and fill-in artists and everything. And a big part of it was that there's the whole final scene or issue or two on the Arcanian Legacy. Yeah, there's like 16 named characters.
Yeah, there's a lot of text, a lot of dialogue in those issues.
And the thing is, I intended to do that.
Right.
I intended for that story arc to feel like the very first original Star Wars story arc I read, which was the Wheel story by Archie Goodwin.
Yeah.
In the Marvel Comics, I think it was issue 18 to 23. And they were only doing 17-page issues back then.
Okay.
And so they were having to cram in as much as they could on the page already.
Right.
But that story arc is loaded. It's loaded, and Darth Vader shows up in the middle of it or near the end of it, and there's just a whole lot of stuff going on. And that was what I wanted. I wanted to have, and I do this in a lot of my stories, including in Star Trek, where you'll have the Battle of the Five Armies, basically. You'll have everybody show up at once. Yeah. And it's everybody rushes on the screen, and that was what I wanted to have. I was just, the problem simply is that gets really, really hard to draw.
Yeah.
And so the best thing I could say for it is we did finally pay off all of the subplots that we introduced. The worst thing I can say for it is some of the subplots were shortchanged.
Right.
And that was, I'd hoped to do a thing with Griff where we would explain where he was the whole time he was missing. It ended up being a page. A page 3 years later, and a running joke all that.
But you got
time.
that page.
Yeah, I got the page, but it needed to be more than that. And but this is the thing. It's comics. It's like television. In like network TV series. In the pre-streaming era, you cannot control when a series is going to end.
Yeah.
And so you'll have things like Babylon 5, which has to rush and finish the 4th season, thinking that the series is going to be canceled. And it resolves every important subplot at the end of the 4th season, and then they accidentally get picked up for a 5th season. And it's
Yeah.
and it's like now what?
Oh, no.
Well, or a series will discover that they are getting canceled, so they have to rush things.
Yeah.
And the end of the series suffers from that. I could have used, Demon, which was 4 issues. It was a concept that was written for 6.
Okay.
But
it's so
it
excellent.
was, yeah. Well, I didn't actually write it as 6. I would have preferred it to have been 6.
Okay.
The Destroyer literally was 3 issues, and we smushed it to 2.
Okay.
In order for me to get a 4th issue out of Demon, because there was no way they wanted to end at 50 because it was a round number, and more importantly, it would have wrapped it up in 10 volumes of the graphic novels that they were doing at the time.
Sure.
They wanted to do, or actually that would have been the 9th. One of the dynamics in comics is that publishers don't really like to have numbering on a graphic novel series go past volume 9, unless it's a manga, because booksellers, they will order fewer copies of volume 2 than volume 3.
Right.
But they'll order fewer copies of volume 7 than volume 6.
Yep.
And once you get to volume 10, it goes down the tubes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's because if you think about it, if you're running a bookstore, are you going to want to carry volume 10 of something and have somebody keep asking, well, where's volumes 1 through 5, 6,
Right.
7, 8, 9? That's a lot of stuff to have to stock.
Yeah.
And so you'll feel better about something shorter. So again, I'm against reboots in general. On my website, Comicron, I have a whole essay about not rebooting comics numbering from the beginning.
There's a lot of Star Wars number 1s out there.
Yeah, there's too many. And there's a functional reason not to do it as well, which is that comic shops have these subscription folders. And if you actually reboot a series, if you take 8 months off or something, or a year off, or 3 years off between the old one and the new one, well, that subscriber list vanishes.
Sure.
Everybody who said, "Give me that book," one of the reasons we have stability in the industry now, relative to in the distant past, is that the number of people who buy issue 54 of a series is going to be reasonably close to the number of people who buy issue 53.
Sure.
Because you actually have to physically go to the comic shop or send an email and say, "Hey, take me off this list."
Right.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
And so there's an inertia there. There's a momentum there that stays. And if you just keep restarting every time, you get the collectors going for the first issue or whatever.
Right.
But you end up, the sales go right back where they were usually, and sometimes lower, because every jumping on point is a jumping off point.
We're actually in the middle of starting up some more comics content on utini.com. We're trying to get more comics coverage, starting a new podcast. And one of the written pieces that I'm currently working on is explaining the difference between all the different Darth Vader series that have ever existed. You've got Darth Vader and from 2015, Darth Vader 2018, Darth Vader 2020. There's a lot of restarting at number 1.
Note that that's really a Marvel phenomenon too.
Okay.
One of the weird things, and we discussed it at Dark Horse. One of the weird things about the Dark Horse line, they didn't do much in the way of comics named after a character.
Oh, sure.
Which is weird because almost all of the biggest selling comics are named after a character.
Yeah.
They're, Batman, Daredevil, whoever. It's not usually the case that something's not named after a character. So anyway, the Knights of the Old Republic comics are the Knights of the Old Republic comics because of the setting. It's really the Zane Carrick series.
Should have been the Mumo Brothers series, am I right?
Well, if it hadn't been called Knights of the Old Republic, I had suggested Renegade.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
I like that.
Just because that would have been his thing.
Yeah.
But again, that sounds actually tougher and angrier than he actually is.
Yeah, right.
So,
Sure.
so I'm I'm not sure what it would be. But,
Well, speaking of
but anyway.
angry and tough, you mentioned this a minute ago that one of the biggest twists in the series ended up getting pushed till much later, till after Vector. That is the big twist, and this is maybe the biggest spoiler for the entire run. So if you haven't read these yet, this is a warning here. One of the biggest twists revolves around realizing that the rogue Mandalorian, Roland Dyer, and the mad Mandalorian scientist Demagol are, in fact, they've been body swapped. There's been a switcheroo.
Right.
What was it like writing the long con? And for those who are listening on audio, he's showing action figures of the characters, which I didn't know existed.
Yeah, that's the they did the Star Wars comic pack with the first issue that Roland appears in.
Oh, nice.
A cameo panel, and that's a Jarail and a Roland.
Oh, cool.
I keep my props right here. It's wonderful. They're the only action figures they ever made
Wow.
of the characters. But no. Okay, so again, this goes. A lot of times, writers are trying to entertain themselves,
Sure.
and or we're trying to recapture things. The thing with Roland and Demagol, this harkens back there was a series done by Jim Starlin called Dreadstar. It was an epic comic for Marvel. The very first comic book I did for Marvel was an epic comic called Crimson Dynamo. But the Dreadstar series was a sort of an adult science fiction series in the early 80s. It's wonderful. Jim Starlin, of course, is the creator of Thanos. And a lot of the stuff that you see with the MCU, the Infinity Gauntlet, all of that. But he did a thing where he hid a traitor in the cast of Dreadstar for about a year and a half, 2 years almost. And because he was the only person writing that series, he was able to pay it off. He knew who the character was. And he was able to pay it off. He knew what he was going to do, I assume, and he was able to pay it off. Fast forward about a year or so, or maybe somewhere in there at the same time, you have you have the Amazing Spider-Man comic where the Hobgoblin is introduced. That's a successor to the Green Goblin.
Right, sure.
And I can't remember whether Roger Stern. I think Roger Stern wrote his introduction. Yeah, Roger wrote that, and then it was picked up by Tom DeFalco after Roger left. But I remember, there were clues there as to who he might be, but we really couldn't tell whether it was something like, where the writer already knew who the character was going to be, or whether it was going to be something like the Green Goblin in the 1960s. Where Stan hadn't even introduced Norman Osborn yet.
Right.
They didn't know who that character was going to be, and that is something that has always driven me absolutely nuts. When that happens, whether it's in TV or comics or whatever, when they reveal that in Lost, they don't really know what's going on until later in the series. They'll make an episode.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, Quantum Leap. Oh, give me a break. You kind of must have sort of known what it was going to be, what things were about. And yes, I understand that you want to leave doors open and let things develop, as I did as well with Knights of the Old Republic. But I remember at a convention having this heated conversation about whether there really was an answer to who the Hobgoblin was, or whether they were making it up as they went along. And indeed, they did. The later arcs by other writers, they made up one answer, and then years later, Roger Stern came back and wrote a comic book where he said, "No, this was my answer over here."
Yeah.
So it might have been both answers to that question.
I'll have to look into that.
I wanted to do this. I wanted to have a con. There were going to be several long cons in this series that were going to, get. We're going to victimize our con artists. One of them is Hazen. This long con that he's been running with the help of the Sith magic of the Yoke of Seeming, which allows him to look like a normal person.
Such a great reveal.
but it only works to Jedi's. Everybody else can see what he looks like. And then we have Demigol. And I literally on the page of the script of issue 10. It was originally issue 9.
Yeah.
I in the intro, or not in the intro, but in the text for the artist, I say, all right, starting here, this is Demigol in the armor, and we're gonna stiffen his body language, and I want the editor to know we're dropping contractions at this point because he speaks formally.
Okay.
And when we have him in combat, he's much more martial artistry, and he's very precise with what he does. And somebody on the Dark Horse boards figured it out immediately.
Yeah, of course.
And just immediately, and I'm like, wow, I've really screwed this up. But we start going forward because there were mysteries that were intended to be mysteries and mysteries that weren't. Malak was obviously, we joke about Malak being Alec and being Squint before that. Well, it was never intended that anybody would think he was anybody other than Malak.
Yeah, that's evident.
It's just the characters don't know yet. The characters don't know yet. And it was my belief at the time, and I still believe it, that all Darth names are not the original names. There's some, you're not Steve, and you don't become Darth Steve.
Right.
At the time in the fandom, there was this feeling that Revan was Revan's real name. There was this feeling that Malak was Malak's real name, and I didn't want to show either of those things being true.
Yeah.
Because that would imply that Sidious is somebody's real name, and that's silly.
Sure.
It's
his name is Sheev.
So I said, okay, so Revan is going to be short for Revanchist, and that's something that is a term that I knew back from poli-sci grad school, and Malak. I sort of slid into that. I gave him my biggest mistake was giving him a last name on a page of the 57th issue of the series that nobody counts as part of the series, the handbook.
Yeah.
But there is story content in that handbook. But I shouldn't have put the name there because the other thing that they did, not action figures for, but they did miniatures. They did Knights of the Old Republic miniatures for the miniature game.
Wow.
And I actually got called out by the designer of the miniatures at a panel at Gen Con saying, okay, Alec, what's the deal with his last name? Because we had to try to fit it on his his card. And I'm like, yeah, that was never supposed to be his last name.
Just for the handbook. Yeah.
No, that was going to be in continuity for like 2 months.
Right.
And then Vector happened, and it went more than 2 months, and it got out there, and it's loose, and people have wondered about it ever since. And it's like, well, I shouldn't have gone there. But anyway, yeah. So that turns out to be, it's the Hazen thing is a long con in terms of years, because obviously Hazen's been doing it for 20 years or so, 30 years. Demigol's con is just over the course of 3 years of the series, 40 odd issues. But it's a much bigger deal. I'm glad we got to pay it off. And I have spent the last, trying to trump that. So when I did a trilogy for Star Trek, the Prey trilogy, I have a character named Korg who has a con that lasts 100 years.
Wow.
And because he's a Klingon, he can do that. But yeah, if you're looking for that Knights of the Old Republic, what's the long con going on here? That's there's a lot of that flavor in that series.
Well, cool. I've never dipped my toe into Star Trek, in any medium, but if ever there's a time to do it, it's when we're in the middle of a global pandemic and there's nobody to see and nothing to do. So might have to
Yeah.
check that out. Freddie, I know you've got one more big question here.
Yeah, I've got a big one. So, looking at those characters you keep bringing up, your action figures, and especially the Kenobi in the background, and the fact that a lot of fans have Kenobi and a lot of your content in their top 5. There's so many things to be proud of, but specifically with KOTOR, what's your proudest moment with these comics?
Oh, gee. I think having the omnibus come out, that just tops everything. Because these books have now been reprinted 1, 2, 3 different ways.
Yeah.
Just in the United States. And this is going to be the first time where it's all in one volume, and it's going to be massive.
Yeah.
The fact that I got to do it all, that is so rare.
That is huge.
That is so rare. I'm not, I'm not a name writer of comics. Somebody that gets to go in and gets a guarantee of however many issues or whatever.
Yeah.
The fact that we got year 2 was because it sold so very well in year 1. The fact that we got year 3 was because we knew we were going to do Vector, and that was going to boost sales, which it did.
Yeah.
Issue 25 was the best-selling issue in the series.
Okay.
And we knew we were going to do the year after that because that third year had helped the sales. And we just never knew from year to year what was going to happen. I'm delighted that I got to actually the series actually finishes a couple of times because we have the war storyline that comes out at the end there. And people say, well, could there be more stories? Sure. I mean, it's only a year in the kid's life. This omnibus is just volume 1 of the omnibus. It actually has volume 1 on it.
Oh, does it?
But there's a rationale for that, which is that the omnibus reprints what has just been in Epic Collection volume 1, 2, and 3. My guess, this is not anything official.
Right.
I would assume that volume 4 is going to have you would just looking at it timeline wise, what's next? You've got the Old Republic video game comics.
Yeah.
And then next after that is going to be Lost Tribe of the Sith.
Ooh.
And that's like 20 issues right there. And then what's after that? You got Knight Errant book 1, 2, and 3.
I was gonna say you could reprint Knight Errant. Yeah.
You got Knight Errant book 1, 2, and 3, and you've got Jedi, which is the Darth Bane book. Well, that's 20 issues right there, 19 issues right there.
Yeah.
So I would not be at all surprised if that's what they do.
Yeah.
That there's a volume 4 and a volume 5, and I would not be surprised if there's a volume 2 of the omnibus for the same reason. But I have absolutely no knowledge that anything like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's just me firing here from the cheap seats.
Yeah, I make those same kind of predictions because I've got Tales of the Jedi, the Marvel Epic Collection that doesn't have any of the Tales of the Jedi comics in it. It collects the Dawn of the Jedi comics. So
well, that's first, but that makes sense though. I mean, they needed to lead with something. And when they got the license, the first books out of the gate. The first book out of the gate was the Marvel years, the original series. But then they hit Legacy. I think they hit Legacy and us at about the same time, because we were naturally, 3-volume things, because we had like 50 odd issues.
Right.
And actually Legacy ends up getting even one more go round because there's a section that John didn't do. I'm glad I was able to finish KOTOR and not have somebody else come along and finish it for me.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's an immense amount of work that it was involved everybody and unsung heroes in all this. Michael Atiyeh drew. He was the colorist, and also he did digital inking on a lot of it. He did every issue but one.
Wow.
And it was just an issue where we had sent it overseas because we were trying to catch up.
Sure.
That's the second issue of the Mumo Brothers story.
Okay.
But he drew he did the coloring and what they call digital inks on every issue but one. Michael Heisler lettered every issue of the series, every page.
Wow.
And not just that, but just about everything I ever did at Dark Horse.
Amazing.
And so he had to, whenever I would catch something in the art and say, okay, this doesn't look right, please, we have to add a word balloon explaining why this doesn't look right. He did yeoman's work at getting that stuff done. And then, the artists on the series, obviously Brian Ching for creating the looks of these characters. Dustin Weaver, who is, very popular now at Marvel, and I can't be happier for him because he put enormous work on the page in terms of designing the looks of things, and one of the whole reasons we did the handbook the issue was that he had, just for the hell of it, done his own cutaway sections of The Last Resort, and I think he was starting on one for the Mumo Willowa, and it was like, we have to put this in something.
Yeah,
it has to be somewhere. If you look at those, the characters are actually standing tiny in the ship somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, where's Waldo to find all
those.
the characters? So I mean, they're great. We had some other fill-in artists that were good. Bong Dazo, he passed away a couple of years ago. He does a lot in that sort of the last year and a half or so. It's just and then we have such great cover artists. Some of the best covers are the painted ones. And so everybody put a lot of work and a lot of effort into these books. The brand name is a critical thing with comic shops and how they order. So the numbers of a book at Marvel are just naturally going to be much higher than the numbers of a book at Dark Horse.
Right.
Whether it's Conan or whether it's Star Wars or whether it's Aliens or something else. But I guess kind of the thing that we're seeing here now is that the collectors are finally discovering that.
Yeah.
And they're not just, it's not just the Knights of the Old Republic books, but it's a lot of the Dark Horse books that they're really bidding up. And it's good that Marvel is also reprinting all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's but yeah, I couldn't be happier that this is all coming out. And I just hope that I've ordered enough.
Right.
And that my partner retailers have ordered enough, these things do occasionally go back to press, but you can't count on it.
Yeah, they become quite collectible.
So,
even the Epic collections have become quite rare. Quite pricey.
Volume 1 went out of print the same day or the same month that Volume 3 came out.
Oh, is that right?
And
wow.
Oh yeah. Although that had already gone to a second printing, so
okay.
I keep tabs on this stuff. I don't know why.
Yeah, definitely. And if you would like, you can pre-order your copy of the Knights of the Old Republic Omnibus. I know I already have. We've got a link that will go in the YouTube description for this, and you can also find it at Things from Another World, which is where I have pre-ordered mine. I know, Mr. Miller, you're doing a promotion where you're trying to gauge interest in terms of how many people would like signed copies. Is that right?
Yeah, I have since I am getting a number of copies of my own, I'm just building a mailing list right now. People email me, say, put me on the list. In order of when I receive them, when the books come in, let's say if I've got 20, I'll contact the top 20 people on the list, or if I've got 40, or if I've got whatever the number is I'm happening to be. And it's got to be U.S. only because these things weigh a ton.
Yeah.
They're just they weigh a lot.
1,344 pages, I think.
Yeah, and I went and weighed one of the equivalent editions in the comic shop the other day. I had my luggage scale.
You bring your
with me.
scale to the comic shop?
I actually did, because I have a little luggage scale that goes on a hanger, and which I need, because if I'm traveling, I have to bring books back or something. I've got to weigh the suitcase, and so it's just naturally with my work stuff. And so I asked for a bag. Somebody gave me a bag with a handle, and I put the book in it, and I weighed it, and it was like 7 pounds.
Oh.
So
Wow.
yeah, and also just the way the postal service has been lately.
Yeah.
I sent something to Canada that took over a month, and
Sure.
I just cannot. I can't. We're talking about a book that is releasing at $125.
Yeah.
And I'm charging more than that, and I not much more than that, but I can tell you that it's not uncommon for these books to be $200, $300, $400 before too long.
Wow.
And so
Get them now while they're hot.
Yeah. The retailer's final order cutoff date is February 15th, which is a few days after we're recording this. That does not mean that they can't still get it.
Sure.
That simply means that they're not guaranteed to get it.
Well, we'll make sure we ship this episode in time. And we have now reached the hour mark. We want to let you go. We want to respect your time. Thanks for coming on the show. I do have one last very hard-hitting, important question to ask you, though, before we do. One of our Discord members, Skooma Joe, which I'm going to go ahead and say is the greatest Knights of the Old Republic comic fan in the universe. Everybody who joins the Discord, he always is recommending this as his favorite. He certainly has gotten me to actually take the plunge and read all 56 issues, depending on how we count issue 0, of course, in the War series. But he asked this: what is the story behind the Griff puppet? I know that you've got a Griff puppet it's in a quite iconic photo of you that's used in promotional material. So is there a story behind this? Where did it come from?
He's not here. He's in my comics building, which sounds terrible, but yes, I have a comics building. It's a farm. I've got buildings all around. It's an old farm.
That's cool.
So my fans in Memphis, again, that's my hometown. The show Mid-South Con, the local fan force Jedi, the Mid-South fan force, Memphis fan force. They were always big supporters. They were always very, very much. I remember the first time I met some of the members of this group. The women were wearing Zane and Jarail shirts that they had made themselves, and because they shipped Zane and Jarail, and the next day they showed up, they had shirts with Shell, and of course Shell is the other love interest,
right?
And there's a circle with a line through her face, and I'm like, well, this is. So these are people who are industrious and who are making things on their own. And they costume, and they wanted me to costume, and I said I don't costume. I don't costume because it's not my skill. I costumed only one time at my very first convention. I was trying to be Indiana Jones. I basically had I wore khaki, and I had a hat, and I had a gun. And my friend said I looked like an armed accountant, and that's what he told everybody I was.
You're gonna miss.
But he was wearing this sort of leather, Judge Dredd armor kind of thing, and I told everybody that he was the floor mat from a 1972 Dodge Dart. So that both of us, that was it for us. But I dedicated a novel to him years later. That's
there you
okay.
go. It's all good.
But anyway. So I said, look, I do not want you to dress me up as anybody. That's just not my thing. I said, but we want to dress you up as one of your characters. And I think they were pushing for Karth or somebody like that.
Yeah.
And I said, look, no, I'll tell you what, I will only dress up as Griff, and only if the costume is to exact scale. and I thought that got me clear
Off the hook.
because Griff is 3 feet tall, and I thought that was cool. So I arrived at the convention the following year, and Tim Brown, one of the members of the fan force, shows up and produces this Griff Muppet that he has designed, which is life-sized, and which I then I bit the bullet and I carried him around for the rest of the show.
Oh,
more
did
or
you?
less.
Wow.
Yeah, including I did a reading of a Griff story, the short story that Griff narrates. I did part of that, and that was funny, and it was really cool. The thing though was I had to get it back home. Fortunately, I had driven to that convention.
Yeah, there you go.
So I put him in the back of the car in the child seat, and in my daughter's child seat. And I've told this story before as well, because I drove with him through the drive-through at the Abner's Fried Chicken place, and the woman looks in the back and she says, "That is the ugliest child I have ever seen."
Yes, Griff would be so humiliated.
So anyway, he's here now. Unfortunately, he's starting to decompose now at this point.
Amazing.
Well, it's just the various his spine has fallen out the back of his and various parts of his costume are starting to fall apart. But that's okay because he's a mastermind and
That's
appearances are not everything.
That's right. That's what we're going to have to name this episode. The interview with John Jackson Miller, a.k.a. the true story of the decomposing Griff puppet. So that does it for this week. Thanks for joining us on Legends Look Back. We want your thoughts. And if you have feedback for us or for John Jackson Miller, you can email us at legendslookback@utini.com or send us a message in the Legends Look Back Discord channel. You can leave a comment on this episode on YouTube or find us on Twitter. You can tweet at us at Legends Look Back, or I'm Jared Q. Mays. Freddie?
At Wake Up Freddy.
Meg?
At Meg Dowell.
And John Jackson Miller.
At JJM Far Away.
Perfect. I didn't even have to tell you ahead of time that you were going to have that cue there, and you just hit it. Excellently. Thank you so much for joining us on this show. It's been an absolute honor.
And may the Force live long and prosper.
Oh, no. And remember, everybody, to keep the Utini fan code and be a force for positivity in the fandom. Take it easy.
This is a Utini broadcast.